So, and you can hear how crispy it is, but so good. In a Ziploc bag, I've already pre-butchered, pre-cut about 9 ounces. It's 250 grams of chicken thighs. And you want to go ahead and trim, you know, if you get your chicken thighs on the bone, obviously you're going to remove it off the bone, remove the skin, but keep, you know, a good chunk of the little knobby fatty bits, because chicken fat is so good, and especially in this recipe. And you're going to put it in a Ziploc bag because you're going to marinate it for about half an hour minimum. So in a Ziploc bag, I like these that have like the bottoms on them. It makes this so much easier to do. You're going to take, pull my sleeves up, 1 tablespoon of soy sauce, 1 tablespoon of sake, and it doesn't have to be the expensive stuff, just the stuff that you can buy at a local supermarket is just fine. And you're going to take your torigara. Now this is the paste version that I've used in the chahan, the Chinese fried rice. If you have the torigara powder, it's the same kind of measurement. I like using the paste for something like karaage because it's already kind of a paste, kind of wet ingredient. You don't necessarily need to try to make sure that the powder version is dissolved before you do the marinade. So you are going to take 1 teaspoon of your torigara paste, or torigara powder. Use the side of your Ziploc bag to kind of mush it all out of the spoon there. One less thing to wash. And then you're going to flavor it with ginger and garlic. Now, kind of like when I make gyoza, this part is kind of up to you. If you like a garlicky karaage, then you're going to use more garlic. If you like a very gingery karaage, which is kind of my preference, then you use more ginger than garlic. So I don't really have specific measurements on this, but you just want to maybe start with, I would start with about like a half tablespoon of each, and then just kind of add more of each, either one, depending on which one you prefer. So I love these Japanese like pre-grated gingers and garlics, and so I'm just going to go ahead and squeeze a bunch in, especially because I love my karaage to be gingery rather than garlicky. Get in there. I'm going to add just a little bit more from a brand new tube. And now I have the Japanese ginger paste in a tube, but I realized this morning that I used it all up. I went to my local Japanese grocery store and they were out. They had all the other tubes of different things, but they were out of the garlic, which you can also buy online. So I went to my local American supermarket and they have something called garlic paste. The difference with this American garlic paste is that it's got whey, which is a dairy product, in it, and I don't know if it's meant to be a stabilizer or a preservative. I'm not sure why it's in there. So if you are sensitive to dairy, stick with the Japanese kind or make your own garlic paste, which is fairly easy to make, but a little time intensive. It's time consuming because you have to chop it up and you have to like paste it onto a cutting board. You don't want to use a chopped garlic for this, much like you don't want to use a chopped ginger, because you don't want to deep fry garlic because then you're going to get these like little bitter bits. So you want to use a paste. Worst case, if you can't find a ginger or garlic paste, you can use ginger and garlic powder, but just be careful when you're deep frying it because it might get browner than usual. So I'm not sensitive to dairy, so I'm going to just use this. But again, if you are, then avoid the American kind, or at least look at the ingredient list on the back of the tube. So once you have that all in your Ziploc bag, you're going to go ahead and squeeze all the air out. And then make sure that you have it completely closed because you don't want marinade all over your countertop. And then you're going to sit there and just massage the crap out of it. Make sure that, especially in my case, the torigara paste got on the top of the bag. So you want to make sure that you're getting all the chicken parts and the soy sauce and the sake all incorporated with the torigara paste. And I think I've mentioned this on other recipes. If you can't find torigara powder or torigara paste, you can use like a chicken bouillon powder. The cubes are kind of hard because then you're gonna, mash it all up to make sure that it's evenly turned into a powder. Or you can just omit it altogether. It's not necessary. It's just this like kind of added flavor agent. To me, it's kind of like having chicken soup versus like chicken soup with chicken fat, like schmaltz in it. It's got an extra level of flavor, but it's not necessary for the food to taste good. If you look at the paste, it's got salt, chicken fat, chicken extract, and then it's got things like onion powder, garlic powder, and then it has MSG in here. MSG is kind of a controversial ingredient in the States. It's never been a controversial ingredient in Japan. It's basically a food flavor enhancer. It's in a lot of American foods, whether you know it's in there or not. And if you're okay with things like mushrooms, MSG should be totally okay with you to tolerate. If you have a mushroom sensitivity, you might want to stay away from this particular brand. But again, take a look at the back of your whatever it is that you're buying and make sure that there's no MSG included if you are mushroom or MSG sensitive. And again, you can omit it altogether. It's still really good without it. Okay, so once you've massaged it all together, and all the bits and parts have the soy and the chicken stock powder paste thing and sake and the ginger and the garlic. Make sure there's a little bit more air taken out. And then you're going to let this marinate at room temperature for a minimum of half an hour. If you put this in the fridge, I guess you could put it in the fridge overnight. Like if you're gonna make this ahead of time before like a big party or something the next day, you can put this in the fridge, but before you put it into any hot fat, you should bring this back up to room temperature, because otherwise the little bits of flavoring that get too cold when they hit the hot oil, there's a lot more spattering that happens. So yeah, so you're gonna let this sit for half an hour. Lucky you and lucky me, because this means I've got double the karaage, is I've already marinated a batch about 45 minutes ago. And in a bowl, this is 1 cup of katakuriko potato starch. And the potato starch is what's so important for a good Japanese karaage to become crispy on the outside and juicy on the inside. But you do add just a little bit of flour. So it's kind of a 1-to-1 ratio. So to 1 cup of katakuriko powder, I'm going to add about 1 cup of regular all-purpose flour. Now you don't want to use bread flour for this because that's got too much gluten, and then the outside of the karaage is going to get a little gummy. Take your trusty chopsticks, stir this around. And while I continue to mix this together, I'm going to reheat. I've already started warming up the vegetable oil. In this case, I'm using canola oil, but use whatever deep fat fryer oil you like to use. And you're going to bring this up to 160 degrees centigrade, which is around 320 degrees Fahrenheit. This is unlike an American fried chicken. There's no egg, there's no batter that you're dredging it in before you dredge it into the dry flour. So on one hand, you know, it's a lighter fried chicken recipe, and it is also one where you don't get your hands dirty because you're not going from wet to dry, wet to dry. Okay, so go ahead, open this up. I'm about 10 degrees away. Now, if you are being health conscious and you do want to use a chicken breast, you can. You're still going to get that nice crispy crust on it. You're just not going to get that kind of knobby traditional karaage that when you bite into it, sometimes you get little bits of chicken fat. So good. Much unlike an American fried chicken, the dredging flour isn't seasoned. All of the seasoning for this comes in the marinade. Okay, so we are at 160 degrees centigrade, so I'm going to bring this down real low, and we're going to do an initial fry. So an initial fry is what gets the chicken going. Okay, you're going to let that cook for about 2 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and use that time and get my next set ready. Okay, so first fry. You get this kind of beigey fried chicken that looks good, but it's not quite perfect. Make sure I've got all the bits and pieces from that batch, and then we will do our second batch. Make sure that you kind of dust off the excess. And karaage is one of those things that it's almost fun to have it in different sizes. Some pieces are small, some pieces are a bit more. But you generally want to keep it at bite-size pieces. 1 to 2 bites max. I'm going to go ahead and move the first batch onto a paper towel lined plate. Ooh. Guess one wanted to take another dip. And you want to let these chicken pieces kind of chill out for a little bit before you put them back in the hot oil. So leave them on your paper plate for, I don't know, 3-4 minutes. And then once that's done and it's kind of chilled out a little bit, then we'll put it back in the hot oil at a higher temperature. And it's kind of like doing French fries. Doing a second fry at a higher temperature makes the outside super crispy and the inside super tender. So it's kind of the same thought process here with the fried chicken. Okay, so it's been 4 minutes where I've just let the previously cooked chicken pieces, the karaage pieces, rest after cooking in a lower temperature oil of about 160 degrees centigrade, which is about 320 degrees Fahrenheit. And now we're going to turn this back up so that we hit 180 degrees, which it is currently. So I'm just going to put this on a really low heat just to kind of keep the temperature where it is. And we're going to put these karaage pieces back in the oil. And that's going to take between 2 and 4 minutes for it to get a really nice golden brown, crispy crust on the outside. You can tell it's a darker golden brown. And see, you can tell that the second fry is obviously a little bit more kind of caramely golden brown rather than the first fry, which is like this kind of beigey looking, tan looking color. I like giving the chicken, whether it's the first fry or the second fry, like a little quick stir after they've been in the oil for like 30 seconds, just to make sure they're not sticking to each other. If you go to Japanese grocery stores, you will find karaage-ko, which is karaage flour, which is really just like a pre-mixed katakuriko and regular flour blend. So you don't have to mix the two yourself, just take it out of the bag. But if you have katakuriko for other recipes and you have regular flour for things like baking, it's a really easy blend to make, so there's no real need to go and buy a specialty flour for that. Especially because most of the flavor from karaage comes from the marinade that you're making anyway. The specific katakuriko and flour mixture, the karaage-ko, that you're making is really just to make it a very crispy outside without having to put it through like a heavy batter. Now in the States, there are also restaurants that do this with mochiko. So like there's like mochiko chicken, which I think is not a Japanese dish. It might be Hawaiian, I'm not particularly sure. But instead of katakuriko, they're using mochi rice flour. And so you get a very kind of similar light fried chicken. So this is kind of similar to that, except my experience is that mochiko chicken doesn't have as much of a marinade as karaage does. And that was our last batch. So I'm going to transfer the over to a towel-lined plate. And then I'm going to clear this all away as always and do a little presentation. And by then it'll have cooled enough for me to pop one in my mouth and we can do a little taste test. So we have this really nice overfilled plate of karaage. which is marinated Japanese fried chicken that's been marinated in sake and soy sauce, ginger and garlic. My preference is to have a more gingery karaage, so it's got a little bit more ginger than garlic, and torigara paste, which isn't necessarily required, but it's a kind of like a added chicken fat flavor. And we are using chicken thighs, so we have little knobs as opposed to like a really lean piece of chicken. Traditionally it's served with like a lemon wedge and a little bit of Japanese hot mustard, which is like Chinese hot mustard. It's not like the American kind, so a little bit goes a long way. Bowl of rice, and in my case I'm having a little chuhai, which is a shochu highball, which is shochu mixed with like soda water. And shochu is like a Japanese vodka. You can have this with beer, which is how it's also served at an izakaya, or some sake. Beer tends to be more like carbonated drinks tend to be what tends to be served in Japanese izakaya with fried foods. But yeah, can't wait to get into this. Get my lemon wedge. I also like my karaage to be pretty lemony, so I put a lot of lemon juice on my karaage pieces. Make sure each piece gets some. And a bowl of rice. And you can hear how crispy it is, but so good. I might be biased because I made it, but it's so good. This is fantastic. At room temperature the next day in a bento box. It's great on a picnic. I'm gonna have some with a little bit of hot mustard. I really can't say enough about how good this is. I hope you give it a shot. Like I say with all of my recipes, it's such a flavorful chicken. Serve it on like game night or game afternoon, you know, and with maybe some chopsticks or toothpicks. I think people would be like, what is this fried chicken? So good. Best fried chicken, hands down. No offense to American fried chicken, but I'm biased. The carbonated citrusy, because this is a yuzu citrus shochu that I'm using, cuts through some of the oiliness that's residual on the karaage. But look, it's not a heavily battered fried chicken, so it's light, it's crispy. And I really can't say enough about how good it is. I really hope you give it a shot. I will see you next time on another episode of Nakatomi Test Kitchen, and I hope you have a pleasant evening.